What is up, guys? It's your boy at DFS Jimmy, bringing you another early week course preview brought to you by fansharesports.com. That's right, the guys over at fansharesports.com do all the work for you, aggregating the sentiments throughout the week, each and every week, listening to every podcast, reading every article, delivering you the pulse of the industry. In a few easy clicks, you have everything at your fingertips. So make sure you get over to fansharesports.com, check those guys out. Before we get into the Greenbrier Classic this week, I want to take a second and do a quick recap on the absolutely dominant performance by this man right here, Francesco Molinari. 21 under this week, number one in literally every category. It paid off for him to skip the event in France this week, come over here, notch his first PGA Tour victory. Really impressive stuff. Quick shout out to two guys that I know were really beating the drum for Molinari this week. Jeff Feinberg over the Pat Mayo Show and Kendo VT, Kenny Kim of the Fantasy Golf Degenerates. Both those guys were really heavily exposed to Molinari and touted him heavily, both in outright win, Jeff for the outright win bet, and then Kenny Kim for the fantasy. I know Mike Leone is always a fan of Francesco as well, but big props to Francesco getting it done this week. If you were over at Fanshare last week, you'd have seen that he was the number 3 most tagged golfer on fansharesports.com last week, so not a secret that Molinari was a great play last week, and Fanshare had him ranked at number 3. He was the 4th most expensive golfer, but certainly paid off his price, racking up 138 DraftKings points with an absolutely dominant performance. So congratulations to Francesco Molinari. Big win for him stateside, and really could open up some doors for him to get some more. Been playing really solid all year. So moving on, let's get into the Greenbrier Classic this week. So another par 70 course on tap. Real quick, you can kind of see behind me that it looks, it's another old style type of course. It's set in the West Virginia countryside. It plays at an elevation of just under 2,000 feet above sea level, so I think it's 1,800 feet above sea level. So a little bit different than what the guys are used to in terms of distance control. That might be the only thing that kind of gives guys trouble here. For the most part, this is a really well-rounded par 70 track, old school design, been refreshed several times over, got a lot of modern touches, especially after the flooding in 2016, which canceled the event. They had a massive renovation, didn't change fundamentally the course at all, but they did re-up on all the grasses in the fairways, spent a bunch of money on the green complexes, completely redoing those, brand new sand, re-deepening of all the bunkers, etc., etc. And the course played great last year. This year, the bent grass greens should have another year of maturity. The root structures should provide for a bit softer greens than we saw last year. New greens are just notoriously, it doesn't matter what kind of grass, they're notoriously hard as the root structures aren't developed yet, and there's a lot of sand that goes into the base of that. So should see a bit more receptive greens this year. Otherwise, we have a lot of course history to draw on here, and it is, like I said, it's a well-rounded par 70 track. We see bombers and plotters alike have success on this track. You can see behind me, it's a really picturesque golf course. It is set, as you can see the mountain in the background, it's set in the valley in the countryside of West Virginia. So there's a lot of undulation throughout this golf course, both off of the tee to the fairway and then from the fairway into the green. Most of the greens you'll see are situated sort of like this one, where the hazards all fall away from the green pretty sharply, and the greens all sit like 3 to 4 feet elevated above the surrounding the surrounding landing area, whether it be rough or sand traps. There you do have a lot of rock features that sort of accent this golf course throughout, and a lot of mature trees. One of the things that's different about this course than maybe some of the other par 70s guys have played lately is, while they have a lot of mature trees here, it's a pretty open look off of the tee. These fairways are pretty easy to hit, fairly generous, and for that matter, the greens are fairly generous as well in terms of square footage. They're a little bit above average for the tour. I think they're just over 7,500 square feet. So pretty ample targets for the guys to hit at. So now that we kind of have a look at this, let's take a look at our scorecard and kind of get an idea of what this course plays like. And despite its generous looks off the fairway and generous size greens, the layout of the course, incorporating the really long par fours, keeps it manageable. The course only averages a tenth of a stroke under par. As you can see right here, the back nine plays about a half stroke easier than the front nine, but on average, a very close to par golf course. You'll see some guys put up some low numbers here, especially if it's a little wet and gettable. Guys can certainly go low, but for the most part, 2 to 4 under per round will have your guys in contention with a shot on Sunday, or at least a shot at the leaderboard on Sunday. So if you can find a guy that's going 3 to 5 under a day, great. But if you just have some good steady golfers that can not blow up on a couple of key holes around here, you can find a lot of opportunity on Sunday with your guys in position. So and again, that kind of falls in line with the other par 70s we've seen as of late. A pretty short golf course, 7,283 yards. Again, it's going to play a little bit shorter than that with the elevation sitting just under 2,000 feet above sea level. So guys don't have to hit driver all over the place here. They can if they want to, and you'll see some aggressive approaches from guys like Bubba and Finau, some of your longer hitters. But that does not take any of the shorter hitters out of play on this golf course. So one of the things that really, I guess, that sort of dictates all par 70s is par 4 scoring, it feels like. And this week is no different. When you get down here, you can see that 62% of your scoring comes from these par 4s. The par 5s are very important this week, too. They're both very scoreable holes. They play as the two easiest holes every single year. You just simply have to score on them. One's pretty lengthy. Guys aren't really going to be getting there in 616 yards. It doesn't yield a ton of eagles, but you do need to make sure you birdie it. The other one, the 12th hole, 568 yards, is gettable in 2. You will see guys get aggressive with this hole, and you will see some eagles posted for sure. But again, you need to make sure you're walking away with birdie on both of these holes every single day. And that said, the rest of the tournament is really decided on the par 4s. And when you look at the leaderboards year in and year out for guys that are finishing inside of the top 10 here, and they do it, generally speaking, by dominating par 4 scoring. And the par 4 scoring is sort of a tale of two par 4s this week. You have the par 4s you can score on and the ones that are almost certain to cost you strokes. The 4 par 4s over 450 yards really are very difficult golf holes, specifically the 11th and the 13th, both approaching 500 yards, both averaging right at 20% of the field that's going to see a bogey. So your longer hitters that are scoring well on long par 4s do have an advantage here. Tony Finau comes to mind specifically. But the guys that can really avoid dropping the stroke here are going to find success at this golf course. The mid-length par 4s, they're what I would call gettable. If your game is on and your approaches are tight and you catch a hot putter, these are all scoring holes. If you're struggling and you're fighting your game a little bit, these holes can easily turn into bogeys. So this is where the tournament's won and lost in the mid-length par 4s, in my opinion. And a lot of it is, guys show up to play or guys don't show up to play. And it shows up in this category, right? You just kind of have to have your game and you got to be on to succeed on this group of holes and find yourself under par. And the ones that do that find themselves at the top of the leaderboard. Everybody is going to find success on the shorter par 4s. Playing a quarter stroke under par. There's only 2 of them. They account for some DraftKings scoring points, but for the most part, in terms of finishing position on this golf course, the 400 to 450 yard and the 450 yard plus par 4s are what dictate success, and that's where I'm going to be focused almost entirely in terms of my key stats this week. For key stats, I'm going to look at, I'm not really going to get too focused in strokes gained ball striking or strokes gained approach, so much as I'm going to focus on greens and regulation gained. I want guys that are giving themselves opportunities. This is like the courses we've seen the past few weeks. This is an opportunity golf course, and guys that are giving themselves opportunities are just going to find themselves more often than not towards the top of the leaderboard. So I'll be focused in a lot on recent greens and regulation gained. If I weigh any strokes gained approach, it's going to be in the last 2 events or 3 events. I really want to try and capture guys that are hot with their irons right now, that are really finding success, because most of the players are going to hit the fairways here. Most of the players are going to have a solid look at at these greens, and it's the ones that are just going to be that much tighter to the pins that are going to sort of separate themselves from the field. So I really want to find that recent approach game and guys that just are consistently hitting greens right now. If you're giving yourselves opportunities, I think you're going to find success here. The other thing I want to favor is I want to favor bent putters a little bit more than usual. Last year we saw the greens really firm, and the first year of bent, we saw some bent specialists kind of pick up on that. Tony Finau being one of them, along with a few other guys. Now that we're in our second year of these bent greens, I expect that the greens will play a little truer, a little more like real bent greens, and I think that'll favor your bent specialist or your bent split specialist. So I will be giving a favor or a bump to guys that have positive splits on bent grass. But other than that, guys, it is all par 4 scoring this week, and it's all greens in regulation. And a hot putter never hurt, but I might use that as a tiebreaker. But for the most part, I'm just going to be looking at big picture. I want guys that are playing well right now and that are hitting lots of greens and making their bones on par 4s. So best of luck this week, guys, at the Greenbrier, at DFS Jimmy signing off. Make sure you give me a follow on Twitter. Make sure you get over to fansharesports.com. Give those guys a look. Get yourself signed up for an account. They got a lot of big things coming for NFL too, so make sure you get in ahead of the curve. Other than that, guys, best of luck this week. We'll catch you next week.